see you guys in the dark.
I should start out by saying I met this boy when I was 15. For his namesake, I will call him Steve. Now Steve was the moody teenage boy. I met him in 10th grade English. I was drawn to him because he never brought up his head, never spoke out. I wanted to be his friend, and that was my first mistake. Steve was a spaz, someone who you would pass by day and never give you the time of day. I became his study buddy. I morally forced myself into his day-in-day life. That was my second mistake. I got this boy needing me to be normal. I got his grades up. I made him fall in love with me. I'm not painting myself in the best light. I was a young girl who thought she knew what love was, and I wasn't right about that. Let's move on 3 weeks after he told me he loved me, and I thought I was on cloud 9. You see, we live less than 3 city blocks apart, and by that point, my mother would let me walk to his house. I started to notice he wasn't the social butterfly, even with his friends. He latched himself to me, and only me. His best friends used to joke he was becoming my shadow. I didn't at the time notice this was right. Me and him dated for over 6 months before he started getting bad. To this point, he was a weeb and addicted to hentai, normal teenage boy behavior stuff. But now he was telling me he was a demon, that he had traded his soul to walk again, and that he now owned an army in hell. I should have ran, but thinking he was joking, laughing it off, and started to say I'm a goddess stuck in a normal human body. I know, but he used to joke I had to be a goddess to love him. It just kept getting weirder and weirder. He tried to do magic on me to force me into things. By this point, it was my birthday. School had ended for the year, and I spent the summer with him, and only him because his friends refused to deal with his demonic self. I used to nap around him because I thought I felt I was safe. I woke up being touched with his hands down my pants, and him touching himself. I got up quickly, and this jerk was the first time I had been touched in a very long time. Me and him argued for hours that day afterwards. I refused to hang out with him for a while without another over. I found out later when I napped as they played video games, he wasn't the only one that would touch me. Around Halloween, he pushed me too far in a fight. He called me everything but a white girl, and had me pinned to his whiteboard in his room by my throat. I kicked him in the shins. He ran to his best friend, who had been making a sandwich at the time, came and found me grabbing my ex's BB gun. I softly, and not crazy like, walked out, and this boy was running down the street. I took aim and hit him in the shoulder blade. His best friend looked me in the face, put his mocha hands up, and said, "I have no problems with you." I then calmly walked over to Steve, crouched down, and told him I would not be treated like that if he dared touch me again. They would never find him. And then walked into his house and locked myself in his room. Being the stupid teenager I was, I forgave him, and he didn't press charges. We had broken up over something not related to this, and I thought we could be friends. He got him a girl that we will call Eve. She was insane, just as much as him. Because he told her he still loved me, she tried to kill me, and him and herself, in school one day by forcing a bottle pins down his throat at breakfast, trying to stab me in a hall, and then slitting her wrist at lunch at the library. She got locked up in a mental facility last time I checked. They moved to Texas, and she was still locked away. I broke away from our friends by this point. I couldn't deal with it. I found another guy I thought could be Mr. Right, and was moving on with myself. Steve would call me 20 times a day at this point. It got to the point that I couldn't sleep. I thought about changing my number, but how to explain that to my small, loving mother? Then he changed ways. He made an account on Facebook. The copy of mine down to minor details. He had everything, all of my pictures. He tried to be me, made my mother think it was my account. He started to message me, being so confusing to the point that I didn't know what to do. He would tell me what I'm wearing, and that I looked perfect. He would tell me in the middle of the night to go outside, and I could be with him, just us as one person. That the field behind my house would take us far away. I blocked that account, saved all the screenshots I could, and went to the police at that time, which was over 10 years ago. The cops didn't care about it, though. They had better things to do. He later decided he was gay. After ruining my life, he chose to run away to be a kept boy for an ex-police officer. He still messages me on his main account once a year, telling me he misses me. Girls and boys, don't be a Steve. I had just turned 16 a few months before this. I should have learned my lesson, but I hadn't. This man was charming in an ugly duckling kind of way. So tall and nerdy. I fell hard for him. I thought he was a prince. This prince came from 6 other siblings, and an insane mother. Luke was a sweet boy. A virgin I didn't have to chase. He chased me, a complete change from my last 2 boyfriends at this point. It was a hurricane of feelings. He bought me gifts. He would pick me up from school for snacks. He would take me on walks around because he didn't have a car. He seemed like a gentleman. I later found out he was just grooming me. He was 23. He should have never been around me. But let's move on. I had been dating him for about 4 months. When he first took me, we were at his house with his siblings all around us. Rooms over at this point. I didn't have a choice. I still remember hearing his younger sister laughing through the door. I had to be picked up that night. I cried in the bathtub as I scrubbed my skin raw. I kept getting worse. Each time he took me, or had me over, I was slipping into a deeper depression. I thought that was love. No, this was just possession. I was just a young girl. It happened daily for a while, and then kept happening out in public. I didn't have a chance to choose. I stopped being me, and became what he wanted, which was his toy. It kept up for about another 3 months before I broke up with him. I stopped eating for about a week, not moving, crying if anyone ever touched me. My mother had no choice. She had to Baker-act me. I spent 3 days relearning to re-eat, which to this day is hard for me. I can forget to eat for days. I still don't like being touched or letting men near me. The whole time I was in the mental hospital, I begged for him. I thought without him that I couldn't live. I couldn't be whole. He was never charged with anything for breaking me. I cried when I finally figured out he had this grand plan. He turned me from a young girl into a survivor. It took months before I could go out in public without a panic attack. I still run into him sometimes to this day after breaking my conditioning. I still freeze, and in fear, turn around and run in the other direction. My mother broke us up. I'm glad for that. Girls, don't be me. If a boy 2 years older than you in your teens asks you out, tell him no. It's not worth the pain. Nothing is worth going through that. Prince Charming is not a man years older than you. He's not your teacher or your best friend's uncle. He's not, I promise you. I was a victim, because I was his brother's best friend. I still talk to his brother. His mother hates me for taking his brother's virginity. His sisters finally think that I'm okay. This happened between Steve and Luke. I dated a JROTC brat. We will call him Ryan now. Ryan, he was a military brat. He treated me with the respect that I deserved at first. It was lovely. He treated me like a princess. He would walk me to class, carried my books, called me his milady. But as these stories go, it wouldn't last. He had a temper and liked to grab me by my arms. I would have bruises daily. I would try to walk away and end up with black eyes. I dated him for only 3 months. He was respected by all the JROTC brats, and he had told them that I was not to be messed with. We separated because I went over to his house one afternoon when he didn't suspect me of coming over with cookies. I found him with peanut butter on his shaft, and him getting his dogs to lick him, and another one of them mounting him. I just closed his door and walked out. Didn't tell him I was there. I just went home and didn't tell him that I ever was over. I called him later that night, saying we were through because I couldn't deal with his anger. He begged me to come back and that he would change. I couldn't, though. He told me I would rue the day I met him. Afterwards, my life became hell. The full JROTC turned on me and started to pick on me and destroying my things. A freshman cadet came up to me with a full thing of orange juice and poured it onto my brand new laptop and called me a whore for leaving him. I lost it and locked myself in the bathroom that day. I thought of going back just for the torture to stop. I didn't, though. Instead, I went to the guidance office and had my lunch changed and spent the rest of the year avoiding everyone. It was hard. I cut everyone out of my life yet again, including my soul sister. That was when I met Luke. To this day, this man doesn't know that I know he's a dog toucher. Last I heard, he was kicked out of the military for another reason with dishonorable discharge. This is an ex that I never thought that I would talk about to anyone. My family never knew that I dated him. It only lasted 3 weeks, but then that itself should never have been that long. I will call him James. Now James is over 5 years older than me, and was my neighbor. I've known him since he moved in, since I was 8. He was always the forbidden fruit to me. I never thought it would give me the time of day. He was also a brony. That is very important to remember. When I turned 19, I finally had the courage to ask him out. He said yes, and then told me that I could have asked him out at 13, and he would have dated me. He said I remind him of Fluttershy. That should have been my first sign that it wasn't going to work. From day one, he didn't want to leave his house. We always had to meet when no one was around. I was always locked up in his room as we watched My Little Pony, while I wore a light yellow shirt he bought me, with no shorts under it, and was held in his lap. He wanted me to be his lap pet. I figured 3 days into dating, I was just happy to have someone to cuddle with. It kept getting weirder because he kept asking me to talk like Fluttershy, and act like her. He even bought me a pink wig. I know he was really not in reality. I kept coming back. The day he asked to take me, he also asked me to do it as Fluttershy. I lost it. I thought he was joking. I'm a person, not a pony. I stopped going over there. Stopped talking to him. His family jokes that I would make a perfect girlfriend for him. Still to this day, he moved away not weeks after we separated. He found a girl completely opposite of me. I hear they married, but now are getting a divorce. I think he's still into My Little Pony. I think he's okay, but I'd rather not see him ever again. Lilith was a pretty girl, a wild child. I met her online when I was 20. I loved her harder than all of my other exes. I wanted to marry her to the point I left my sick mother to meet her, in Iowa. She was sweet, addicted to the Crow storyline, and a Deadpool addict. We had plans to get married. We at this point had been dating for over 9 months, and I was in love. She was schizophrenic. I never knew till I got up there and got off my plane. I was so happy to see her, to hold her, and love her. It lasted 3 days into my visit. She stopped her meds 3 days before I showed up. She said because she wanted me and her to fully be ourselves. She remembers the visit completely different. It seems I berated her. I made her feel like shit for not wanting sex. No, that's not what happened. I tried once to be intimate with her, and she froze because she thought that she was in the wrong body, that she was male. So I let it drop. We just cuddled, and when she was at work, I would cook her dinner. I later met my twins, my big brothers from this trip. They were her oldest friends. I spent that night after meeting them the happiest this whole trip. I met my future family. That was till we got back from the party. She slapped me and told me to learn my place. Then she went to bed. The next morning she went back to normal, the loving, goofy girl that I knew. This only lasted 3 more days before she started telling me that she was part of death, that she remembered her last 5 lives, and that she was only a piece of death, that she, in her last life, was Jack the Ripper. that she planned to hunt down the rest of the pieces to put herself back together, and that I didn't remember it, but I was life itself, her creator and true love. This went on for about a week before it went to a head. She came back from work and lost it on me. It seems I had been a horrible love, and I was abusing her, that I'd been calling her bad names, that I had hit her. This never happened. I spent the next 2 days under a desk hiding from Lilith's wrath. I didn't eat or drink anything for 2 days. I left my phone there, and the twins had to get me because I cried to them to come and get me. They got me home. This is how I got my brothers. They are everything, and without them, I would have died in the college dorm. I found out later that she had a major breakdown, started to collect sheep hearts, and got kicked out of college. The twins stopped being her friend, and she found a new therapist who got her on her new meds. Then she convinced me that she was truly a male. Last I heard, she had the surgery and legally changed her name from Lilith to Cain. And then he married a trans girl. Once in a blue moon, I still get messages from either of them telling me to burn in hell.
I'll see you guys in the dark.
This story starts years ago. For reference, my ex-friend Kevin, who I have known going on 14 years, is about 6 foot tall, probably weighs about 220 pounds, and is known as what we call a neckbeard. For those who don't know what a neckbeard is, I will leave a link in the description for those who are interested. Kevin came back to my life a couple years ago after being married and doing God knows what. Met me and Michael, who is short, 5'4", 130 pounds soaking wet, downtown nearby my old house. He starts talking to us like him ignoring us for 8 years was no big deal. We hang out for a while before I find out he didn't have a home because his reasoning was his roommate stole from him, and he couldn't be around any of that. During this time, he smelled like he hadn't washed himself in about 2 months, with a smell of what can only be described as mayonnaise oozing from his skin. I offer him a couple nights at my house so he can take a shower and rest in something besides a park bench. As he stayed at my house, he had food and a small bed in my room. Only noticed him showering once every month or so, all the while leaving his dirty clothes on the floor, smelling up my room. Me, being the nice friend I was, washed his clothes, and every time I did, his clothing never smelt like anything besides algae and nasty unwashed body. As time went on, he ended up staying at another friend's house, Brandon. Brandon is about 5'6", probably about 190 pounds, with a full black beard. While staying at Brandon's house, I was told by Brandon and his now wife, Caitlin, who told me that they were tired of him because he only had one of 3 chores to do. And each day, one of the 3 chores was either wash dishes, take out the trash, or take a shower because he smelt up their apartment. They both told me on multiple occasions he didn't do anything besides sleep all day and run off at night until he was ready to come back. After finally kicking him out, he randomly stayed back at my house. Stupid, I know, because I couldn't let a friend of 14 years stay homeless. He told me through all of this that him and his ex-wife were still married, and they were trying to get back together. As he was so-called trying, he started staying at my ex's house, Kat. As he stayed there, he told me that they both were having sex while still going and seeing his wife. As time went on, I found out that he got Kat pregnant and met his now girlfriend Bonnie. Found out shortly after he moved Bonnie into Kat's house. After about a month or so, I found out Kat had got her unborn child aborted, and Kevin had no remorse about any of this. Found out from Kat that the abortion happened before Bonnie moved in. While all this happened, Kevin claimed he was with Bonnie while with Kat. As time went on, Kat had remorse, knowing Kevin most likely cheated on Bonnie with her. As Brandon, Michael, Nick, who happens to be another friend of ours, and myself all told Bonnie this, Bonnie looked distraught, but decided to stay with him anyways. Nick told me he wanted to beat Kevin's ass, and that he hated Kevin's guts. I told Nick it wasn't a good idea, and to let whatever happens, happen. As time went on, living with my mother, we couldn't pay the rent. So I asked Kat if she had a room for me, and I would help pay rent, seeing as how her mother and grandmother just died, and she needed help paying the rent. My YouTube was going great, and my mom offered to help for a little bit to pay some rent. I was told once Kevin left, I would get his room. This was about a year ago. Things seemed okay, besides the house smelling horribly because of the unwashed body smell from Kevin's room fumigating the house. To sleep in Kat's room, waiting for May to show up so I can get a room finally. As time got closer, Kevin kept saying his job was screwing him on pay, and he couldn't save up to leave. He begged Kat to stay longer because she owed him for helping with her mother and grandmother during her time of need. Kat gave in and let him stay until Christmas. So it was supposed to happen. As the days went on, I found out Kevin was constantly buying things off Amazon and blowing money on rent-to-own stuff like a surround sound system and gaming computer for $235 a month. Keep that but a few months. Later on, he brought in a few cats that him and Bonnie were supposed to take care of. Kevin refused to get them fixed, so all they did was go into heat and screech constantly. A month or so later, Bonnie begs Kat to let her mother stay over, and shortly after her brother. When her mother left, Bonnie's brother moved into the room I was supposed to get, while asking to have his baby mama and her kids move in. After Kat told him okay, he didn't know when they would show up, until suddenly they showed up at the doorstep. Here comes an older woman and 3 kids. Yep, 3 kids. Being piled into the tiniest room in the house. When I met my ex-girlfriend, I slept on the couch as to respect the relationship. Through all of this, I kept being woken up to kids running around the house and making noise, only getting 4 hours of sleep max a day. During all of this, Kevin and Bonnie's relationship was getting worse. Bonnie was bitching about him leaving bruises on her and how he wouldn't shower, and she had to wash his clothes daily to keep the smell out of her room. She comes to me when Kevin is gone, asking for advice, and tells me she is tired of his bullshit. How all he does is accuse her of having sex with everyone, even me and Michael, his 2 best friends. Michael happens to be asexual. As all this goes on, Bonnie later tells me his ex has sent evidence of Kevin masturbating to her on video chat, and how she can't wait until he leaves, because she won't go with him. Angel, his wife, told us that Kevin wanted to get back with her while being with Bonnie, and that he is still madly in love with her. She told us she hated his guts, and wouldn't let him see his own kid, because she doesn't trust him with the child. As well as telling us he has been this way even when they were together, except for he refused to get a job, so she had to pay all the bills, including his child support. Shortly after, Bonnie and I are in the kitchen while she tells me her and Kevin finally broke up, and he is trying to get her back. During all this, we are laughing and having a good time when I turn around and boom, an accidental kiss. We swore no one would know about it because it wasn't supposed to happen, even though she told me it was better than Kevin's ever could be. Kevin comes to the realization his and Bonnie's life together is doomed, and he starts drinking, claiming he didn't care and wanted to die. During all this, Kevin pins Kat to the floor and threatens her, saying he doesn't care anymore and he will kill her right in front of a 13-year-old child. Proceeds to drink more, and then he walks outside. Bonnie walks outside for a cigarette and finds Kevin on the floor, puking and choking on his vomit. She calls me outside to help him, and we all call an ambulance to take him to the ER. While he was gone, Bonnie claimed she didn't want him back, and she wanted him to stay for a few days because of him saying that he wanted to die. Kevin calls later that night to get picked up, and the next day has a sour attitude about things, telling everyone he didn't need to go to the hospital, that we should have left him there on the floor. The next day, Kevin and Bonnie bring in 4 kittens. Only one was supposed to be brought in for the 13-year-old's birthday, and told me a black kitten was mine. Cat has a fit because now we have 9 cats. The black cat didn't like me, and I was later told his wife took the cat because she somehow got hurt. Sent her and one of her brothers away. As the cats stayed in the house, they started pissing on the floor, and my cats were being blamed even though they are older and use a litter box every time. So I took photos of their cats scratching stuff and defecating on the floor with nothing being done about it. Come Christmas, Kevin claims yet again that he needs more time and begs for her to wait until his income tax comes in. I think that he still owes child support like he did when he came back into my life. So here we are, waiting for income tax to come. Shortly before Kevin and Bonnie finally move out, I get told by Kevin Bonnie claims she sucked me off while Kat was gone and in her bedroom. Asked me who was lying, and I explained that I didn't have anything done to me by anyone this time, despite being single. Then Bonnie is asking me to tell him something that didn't happen. And all was said and done, so I didn't get into a fight over this. I slept back in Kat's room and didn't come out for 2 weeks. While finding out from Michael that Kevin pissed him off about accusing him of being with his girlfriend, even though they have been friends for 16 years now, and Kevin knows Michael to not want to be in a relationship or be with a woman in general. Michael also told me he wants nothing to do with Kevin or Bonnie after all this, and Kevin was just a toxic human being, that he won't answer his phone calls or come hang out with me until Kevin moved out. In my isolation from everything, Bonnie's brother moves out without a word, leaving all of his stuff behind. Come to find out, Bonnie wanted them to stay so that they can get a place, because they couldn't afford rent without her brother, and that she told him he better be lucky they asked him to move in here, or he would be homeless. Kat later realized me and her were on the phone during my accusation of being sucked off by Bonnie, and brings proof I was on the phone during everything, texting and voice chatting her the whole time. Kevin doesn't believe the proof, and accuses me of more stuff that I didn't hear about. Moving day finally arrives, which I was forced to stay in Kat's room, or I would have snapped on everybody. They took over 2 days to move a room and a bathroom worth of stuff. Mind you, it was a small bathroom, and a very small room. I heard from Kat they tried to con her out of more time, that Kevin was so petty he almost said fuck it, and told Kat if he wanted to, he would just stay and make her get an eviction notice. When they finally left, they left trash cans and nasty used personal products everywhere, and the room they used, that's now my office, smelled so bad it took me 4 days to get the smell out of that room. That's after incense and tons of sanitizer wipes. I wiped down the walls and moved all my stuff in. Kat told me that day Kevin demanded why I get a room and office to myself, that he should be the one still in that room. After, we found out Kevin never got his income tax and didn't have a place to stay. Days have passed, and we hear rumors he borrowed money to move out of state just to find out that wasn't true, when he showed up at our doorstep demanding turkey they left here, and a bottle of Patron that has now been gone for weeks. He has demanded whoever ate the turkey that they owe him money in a week, and that he is pissed because now they want all that stuff so that they can cook it and eat it. Funny thing is, he didn't pay money for this turkey. His uncle gave it to him. So to me, it sounds like desperation because he never saved up any money for the nest egg to move out of Florida. Kat has recently told me that Kevin is now blaming me for no longer being in this house, and that I did something to his cat because now she is walking funny, and he is blaming me for all of that as well. Kat has also told me that Kevin hasn't paid rent in 3 months. His only bill was to pay the electric, which is normally under $400. It has gotten less because all the people have moved out. It got so bad that he was blaming the electric company for taking money out of his bank, but not showing it up on his bank statement. Kat had to sell her PS4 to a neighbor so that we could pay the electric. Now, since they are gone, I'm the one paying the electric, and I know the electric will be paid. After everything, Kat and me are fixing the house and trying to replace what their cats have destroyed, because they won't pay for damages to the carpet and her grandmother's old chair she loved before passing away. Lately, my friends have finally come over to hang out, and everything is fine. We have all talked, and no one wants anything to do with either, and hope they just leave and never come back. So Kevin, in just 2 years' time, you have burned bridges with Brandon, Michael, Kat, Nick, and me. We hope you finally leave state. And remember, don't come back here, because no one wants you around them ever again. You had the best friends anyone could ever ask for, and all you did was fuck everyone over. Have a good life, and try not to be the neckbeard that you are to others.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.